are domain experts on subjects that are in the news. I am Monojit Majumdar, editor for explanatory journalism at the Indian Express. This session, as you know, is about Sri Lanka, where a new president took charge last week and where parliamentary elections will be held mid-November. Sri Lanka has been through a lot in the last couple of years. The economic crisis and the social upheavals that led to the Rajapaksas family losing power in July 2022 was in some ways also responsible for the ascension of Anura Kumara Dissanayake to the presidency. How President Dissanayake helms his country's economic recovery and also handles Sri Lanka's political situation and foreign policy outlook is of great importance to not just Sri Lanka, of course, but also to the countries in its neighborhood. New Delhi will be keen to see how his government views India, especially vis-a-vis Sri Lanka's relations with China. To explain this situation in Sri Lanka to us and to give us his perspective on what has happened and what could happen, we are honored to have with us this evening former diplomat Bernard Goonetilleke, the former Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka and currently the chairman of the Pathfinder Foundation. Mr. Goonetilleke, Excellency, welcome to the Indian Express. Thank you for your time. We are very grateful to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Speaking to Ambassador Goonetilleke will be my colleague in Chennai, Senior Assistant Editor Arun Janardhanan. Arun is a bit of an expert on Sri Lanka himself. He has covered Sri Lanka for many years and has kept a very close eye on all the recent developments in that country. Arun will be in conversation with Ambassador Goonetilleke for the next 45 minutes or so, after which we will take some questions from the audience. Today's explained event is brought to you by our partner, Plutus IAS. My thanks to our partner. Thank you all for joining. Welcome once again. Arun.
Thank you, Manoj. So maybe before we start the conversation, I will give a brief introduction to Goonetilleke. He had a long career in Sri Lankan Foreign Service, probably from the time when Sri Lankan politics really started facing turbulence. He started his foreign career in Foreign Service in 1970, and he served in Malaysia, New York, Bangkok, Washington DC, Geneva, and Beijing. From 92 to 97, he was the permanent representative of Sri Lanka to the UN. In between 2000 and 2003, he served as the ambassador of Sri Lanka to China, and he was acting as a permanent representative of Sri Lanka to the UN in New York from 2004 to 2005, and he also served as the Sri Lankan Foreign Secretary. But more importantly, in 1971, during the first JVP uprising, he had the opportunity to closely watch it. In 78 again. In 89, I think he was abroad, not in Sri Lanka at that time. He was also one of the 4 members who was part of a negotiating team, a peace coordination or peace negotiation team that Sri Lanka set up in 2002 with LTT. And he also had a very brief tenure in Sri Lankan tourism department, tourism ministry. And currently he works as the chairman of Pathfinder Foundation. And I welcome him to the Indian Express Explained Live. Sir, we had multiple conversations in the past. You spoke to Express earlier. Right now, what we are trying to look at is how or what these election results mean for the people of Sri Lanka, as well as an expert in foreign policies, as someone who watched how Sri Lanka engaged with particularly India and China, in the last 3-4 decades. So that is the reason why we decided this title, what the election results mean for Sri Lanka and the neighborhood. So for India, JVP is known as an anti-India party. It was notorious for attacking Indian businesses and enterprises and anyone with suspected Indian interests in late 80s. In our last week's conversation, even we were talking about a particular incident of assassination, all that. But coming to 2024, after this election, what happens now with the victory of a Marxist 55-year-old JVP leader emerging as the Sri Lankan president?
Thank you, Arun. Thank you very much indeed. It's a very interesting story, the journey undertaken by this revolutionary party called JVP, Janatha Vimukthi Peramuna. As you mentioned, in 1970, there was this government that was administered by Mrs. Bandaranayake. That government came into power in 1970. 1 year after her election, the JVP decided to resort to insurrection with the intention of getting her and her party out of politics of Sri Lanka and installing themselves as the rulers of the country. That effort failed. I remember I had just joined the foreign ministry. I was in charge of the communication division of the ministry, and I recall that we even did not have bullets for our rifles and other wherewithal necessary to defend the government. And I remember sending messages to our High Commission in New Delhi requesting help from India to get whatever we wish to have at that time to respond to the JVP attacks. So that was the beginning. And of course, the party was put down quite brutally, I must say. The party was also proscribed. And in 1977, if I'm not mistaken, they surfaced once again as a political party and contested elections. And within a very short period of time, 78, 79, no, I'm sorry, let me see, within 88, 89 period, they rebelled once again. This time, once again, the government and they were once again put down in a brutal crackdown by the Sri Lankan administration. And if you remember, it's right, they were anti-Indian at that time. They had 5 lecture series from the beginning in 1971 to induct young men and women, school-going children into the party. And the 5 subjects contain crisis in capitalism, independence is a device of colonialism. Number 3 was Indian expansion. 4 was the left movement in Sri Lanka. 5 was the path Sri Lankan revolution should take. So these were the 5 lectures conducted. And of course, when the army crackdown started, they looked for people who attend these classes. And they dealt with them. So that was the beginning in 1971. The same thing happened 1988-89 period. True, they were also anti-Indian at that time. I remember certain action taken by the JVP against those who were working with India or importing goods from India, so and so forth, and tried to eliminate them. So that was the beginning of LTT. But what happened in 2024, this month, was a straight piece of film script. Actually speaking, when you look into this, how they came into power, is something very interesting. In the sense, in 2019, we had a situation where Gotabaya Rajapaksa won with something like 6.9 million votes, and others trailed behind. And Premadasa had something like 4.2 million. It's 42.31% of the total number what they had at that time. Now, a couple of years later, we find a situation where, and of course, I forget to tell you, the JVP got only little bit over 3% of the total vote. But 2024, this 3% reflected or increased to 42%, whereas Mr. Premadasa, who received 42%, lost about 1 million votes for whatever reason. And Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the incumbent president at that time, was contesting as a independent, and he got only 17. So for the first time, Sri Lankans had to go for the preferential count to see whether any one of these candidates would reach more than 50%. And eventually they found that Mr. Dissanayake, AKD Dissanayake, had more than 50%. Therefore, he was elected president. So far as from the point of view of the electorate, I see it as a conditional vote given to President AKD to see how he is going to perform. Because people were not very happy with the JVP initially, and JVP took a very important step, that was starting a new party, NPP. They did it in 2019. So therefore, when people voted, they did not vote for JVP per se. They voted for NPP, in which President AKD was there. So that is how he came into power. So keep looking at the thinking of the current president, new president. You mentioned that there was unhappiness with regard to relations with India. But we know that in February, he visited New Delhi, met with External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, as well as National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. And among other things, he also visited Gujarat. The important thing is that is the place where Amul is located. And he had also earlier expressed his unhappiness about Sri Lanka involvement with Amul. So his going to Amul is an important step. Perhaps this opportunity, this visit would have provided an opportunity for India to assess the new president, as well as he would have got an opportunity to understand what India is. It is not India what used to be in 1970s or 80s. It is a different India under Premier Modi. So I presume, it is safe to presume that he has a better understanding of what India is. And based on that, whether he, whatever feelings he had earlier, I think, it is safer to think that he would try to balance his relations with India, knowing very well whenever there is a problem, emergency in Sri Lanka, who comes to Sri Lanka's aid first? It is India. He is definitely aware of it, and that situation is not going to change anytime soon. So I presume, being a realistic man who had come a very difficult journey, will try to address his relationship with India in a pragmatic manner.
So when it comes to India and Sri Lanka, there are a lot of similarities. In India, it is more about caste and religious aspects. In Sri Lanka, also it is more or less a different kind of identity, though the majority Singhali Buddhist population, and everything that revolves around that identity, majority identity. Ordinary people or political leaders or people who have been leading the country for many decades, all these had a background of this particular identity. So suddenly a communist, Marxist party coming to power, what does it mean? How ordinary Sri Lankans, ordinary majority Singhali Buddhist Sri Lankans look at JVP, a party that speak a different language, who talk about class politics, who talk about Marx, Lenin, all that in their internal meetings. How is that going down with the Buddhist monks and ordinary Sri Lankans?
Now, let us try to understand why this particular party with this particular head of the party was elected by the people. Very importantly, I mean, he is a person, second man in South Asia, a revolutionary after Nepal, to be elected head of state of the country. Now, my feeling is why people voted for him from 3% to go up to 42%. Should be a very good reason. Eventually, with the preferential votes, it went up above 50%. How did he went up that much? Obviously, people felt that the very well-known political parties, which had been there for over 70 odd years since independence, delivered not or failed to deliver what they promised at the elections to the people. Basically speaking, it is a rejection on the part of the population of the old parties and expression of hope that this new party And this new man, who comes from very humble background, despite his policy orientation, will do the right thing by the people as well as by the country. So one is a rejection of original political parties that he had, and second one is an expectation, at least this particular gentleman would do the right thing by them.
And another very interesting issue, I mean, an area that India is, or especially South India, Tamil Nadu, interested in Sri Lanka is the Tamil cause. After 2009, the war ended. There were a lot of political strategic efforts to manage the situation. When you look at JVP's stand, it has been always against the LTT, and they have always they tried to see it like a separatist movement. They never recognized the Tamil Elam, the separate Tamil country, or that kind of an autonomy part. JVP had a very nationalistic stand on Tamil issue. Maybe after this economic crisis and everything started, the entire shift, the focus of the country and the problems moved to the economic crisis. But what does it mean for Tamil population in the north and east, and those who are scattered across? How they may be looking at JVP, or what does it mean for these minorities?
You see, if you look into the voting pattern, Arun, you will find the eastern province and the northern province voting for parties other than President AKD's NPP. So that is the sentiment of the minorities in those areas. But very interestingly, when he was elected, he made a special reference and also thanking those who voted for him. And this, continuing on the same line, he said, those who voted for me and did not vote for me, that he will do what is justice. So he basically told, just because you did not vote for me, I will know you, I will not have any dealing with you, but he said, I am president of the entire country, I will do justice by you. So between now and November 14, I presume, what he should do, or what I feel what he will do, is to focus on those two provinces as well, so that there will be an opportunity for the people to understand what would be his policies with regard to the minorities. I don't think he will be overly confident to say that I will bring solution to the problem, but at least I feel that he will have a feeling towards these people and see what mechanism could be adopted to solve or address the problem of the minorities.
So now that this party has won, when you look at their past, it is also about a lot of people, JVP cadres or comrades in their terms, have been killed by Premadasa government, especially. What is the stake of all those killings in this victory, or JVP in 80s and JVP in 2024 is, these are two far different entities? Or are they still carrying the memories, and do they really perceive it as an outcome of their so-called failed revolution or whatever that happened earlier?
Well,
Politically,
I mean, if you look at the country as an entirety, the revolution failed in the north and the east, as well as southern part of the country. The families of those members who died will remember, whether they are Sinhalese or Tamils, will remember what happened. But then, of course, what can be done is the question. There was an insurrection, and the authorities responded, and whether excessive force was used, certainly in certain cases it would have been the case. Do we have room and space to go into those cases is another question. Or do we look forward to the future with confidence? I mean, in a statement made by President AKD in his hometown where his school was, I mean, he rattled off names of his classmates and school friends who died during the 88-89 insurrection. He also said that he was also targeted. And he revealed that his teacher hid him for 1 month from the army, knowing very well what would be the response of the army if the teacher was caught hiding him. But nevertheless, he did. So he remembered all these things. So, excuse me, I don't think it is easy to erase these memories from the mind. But I think what has to be done is to look forward and to address issues that are facing the present generation, and to see how to go forward.
So like I asked you earlier, the similarities between India and Sri Lanka. When you look at the previous governments in Sri Lanka, it has been always a matter of interest or a concern for India, especially mainstream media and politicians, the ruling party in India. It was all about whether the the Sri Lankan president is pro-India or pro-China. Let it be about the Hamandanda port or the new projects commissioned or sanctioned, or the big borrowings from China, even if most of the borrowings are from the open market, still China has a huge stake in the Sri Lankan obligations when it comes to the economy. So unlike Rajapaksa or Ranil, here we have a party which need not to be guessed or assumed about its pro-China stance, at least politically from 1960, when the communist two parties internationally had a split. JVP was an outcome or an offshoot of that international split, when most of the mainstream Indian parties, the communist parties, went for Soviet Union. JVP was a Nepal party. They're still trying to settle that problem. So Mahinda or Ranil, we can always debate whether he's a pro-China or pro-India or different projects. But JVP is definitely, I'm not saying pro-China, not pro-India, but still, JVP has a very rooted proximity to China, probably throughout their history in the last 3, 4, 5 decades. it definitely had a very constant relationship with China. So, how do you look at this new party, which is not only for Sri Lanka, it is also has a political stake, which has international meanings and the communism or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, you can say from the outward appearance, some presidents would have looked pro-India or pro-China. But the fact remains, a Sri Lankan president will be first pro-Sri Lanka. Whatever measures they take will be with Sri Lanka in mind. But of course, there could be special close relations with China, with India, depending on the circumstances. But I don't think that you can take one president and say that he is pro-China and this one is pro-India. Their first and foremost interest is Sri Lankan. So now we are talking about a political party which had close relations with China. Like in Nepal, the party was called Maoist Party in the beginning. But the fact remains, when you are in the opposition, you say and you do things not as a state person, but as an opposition. But when you come into power and when you are given the power of being either a president or a prime minister or whatever it is in a country, you have to act responsibly. And I am convinced that President AKD will also act responsibly, bearing in mind relations with India is important, relations with China is important. Relations with both countries go back to pre-Christian era if you are thinking of ancient past. If you are thinking of recent past, 47, 48, 49, since then we have had very even kind of relationship. So that will continue. I don't think the new president will, for example, put his lots in favor of China or in favor of New Delhi. That he will not do. What will happen most probably is for him to have a relationship that is on even keel between the two capitals.
When you look at the past, not as a foreign policy expert, but as an ordinary Sri Lankan, what are the observations you have about the transactions between JVP and Buddhists? I'm talking about the Buddhist monks, the theocratic leaders, the leaders who are respected as, or who have significant political clouds or even spiritual leaders. How was this engagement between these two parties has been happening? What is the nature of JVP leadership? Are they followers of the faith, or they always keep a safe distance and they have a different transaction between these two entities?
Well, after the election, I found President AKD visiting leading Buddhist temples. and paying his respects to the Mahanayakas of that particular sect. Same way, I have seen him visiting Hindu temples and being greeted by Hindu priests. So, to me, that demonstrated the fact that he, as the leader of the country, he is aware that he has to treat all religions equally. Despite his Marxist alliances, he is acutely aware that he has to deal with them equally.
After this result, what happens to Sri Lanka's traditional elites like Mahinda family, let it be Mahinda Rajapaksa or Gotabaya or Basil or Ranil or Sajid Premadasa? What is going to happen to them? What would be the next? Is there any pending plans JVP has?
Well, I don't know.
Investigations or
I am unable to comment on that because I'm not aware whether he plans any investigations into their past activities. But in general terms, if you ask me, in 2015, Mahinda Rajapaksa was defeated by the population. He had to step down, and President Sirisena and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe came into power. 4 years later, there was another election. 2019, Gotabaya was elected, and the same party won in the 2020 elections. Then current election, you know what happened. I don't have to go into it. From 5 years from now, there will be another election. Depending on the performance of this particular political party, people will decide as they had done before. So, democratic elections will continue in Sri Lanka. And the political parties will come and go. But if you ask whether any action will be taken against any political party or members of the political party, it is a matter they will have to have a prima facie kind of evidence to establish that they have done something wrong. If that is the case, then of course the law will be applied irrespective of their background.
So you served as the foreign secretary. You served in China, America, Mongolia. You're working close with probably many developments in which India also was involved. How Indian diplomacy, how Indian diplomatic leadership, the transactions between India and China in diplomatic circles, how it has changed over the years? Do you think it was better earlier and not that great now, or it has a different kind of dialogue and engagement in the last 1 or 2 decades? How do you look at it?
You see, yes, I have been in China, been in the States, unfortunately not in India. But we have observed what was going on in this relationship quite closely. And personally, I felt in 2019, around that time, there was a very good opportunity for the two countries to bridge the gap and reach an understanding. That is the time when President Xi came to Mahabalipuram, and he was welcomed very warmly by Prime Minister Modi. But how somehow the situation changed very rapidly, and Galwan issue and various other issues took place thereafter. So then I was wondering why this thing happened when such a good opportunity was there in hand for the two countries to resolve their problems. Was there any internal issue in China which prompted the kind of clashes which happened to happen without the concurrence of the political leaders in the hands of the military? I was just wondering. But again, now the situation is different, or it has become different. And couple of weeks ago, we see once again an opportunity for relationship to improve. So it is our hope that for the benefit of our subcontinent and the Asian continent, that these two giants would resolve their problems amicably and go forward and occupy the real place that should be occupied by these two countries in the world international arena. So that is one aspect of it. Then, of course, we also see, despite the kind of irritations, China remains a very important trading partner for India. There is a considerable amount of investment coming from China to India. I don't know how much of investment going from India to China. But at least for the time being, this kind of developments will enable for the countries to see eye to eye. And honestly speaking, we hope such kind of interaction will continue, which will, at least in a small way, help the relations to grow.
When it comes to the nation building, this particular Chinese model, I'm talking about in terms of production, ramping up, the development systems through very aggressive measures, but still coming out with huge outcome. When it comes to Sri Lanka, it is not only about economic recovery, but also about a lot of challenges in terms of production, agriculture. Do you see any sign of any extraordinary changes going to happen under JVP for their Marxist, more rooted economic approaches and models they have, which they can also politically align with?
It's too early to comment. It's only just a week ago the party was elected to run the country. And again, another several weeks from now, the parliamentary election will take place. At which point, of course, the ministries will be established and secretaries will be appointed and the priorities will be decided. But whatever it is, I remember President AKD mentioning that one of the priorities of the new government is to improve production and export-oriented production, which will enable the country to, collect, secure foreign exchange, which is needed at this point of time. So what kind of economic policy he is going to follow, we are not aware at this point of time. But of course, he has hit the nail on the head by saying production must be improved. That itself is an encouraging decision. So we will have to see how he's going to address the agricultural manufacturing and other aspects of the economy.
There is a saying in India. In India, the word revolution is not very strange. India had a lot of many states where communism ruled and all that. So there is a saying that a movement that is struggling and fighting for revolution, and finally, when it comes, there is a blackout. There is an emptiness. There is a blank. There is a void. A situation where you have no clue what to do next, because you have been fighting for the revolution and you reach that point and you are like, oh my God, what is next? When it comes to JVP, how adaptive are they when it comes to the governance, especially modern governance? Do they have enough hands to occupy all these positions that have been, issued families all these years?
This question was asked from the Prime Minister, Dr. Harini, and she said priority areas of the economy, the party has already decided. That covers trade, investment, education, generating employment, and tourism. Those are the areas they will give priority. So that is very encouraging. And also for relationship with regard to foreign policy, she said draft has been prepared. So for all these things to come out, it will take a little bit of time. Hopefully by the time the parliamentary election happens, these things will be ready. What is important is, okay, it's a revolutionary party, it is a Marxist party, you can call it a Maoist party or whatever it is. But when the new president assumed duties, he did not come and upset what as we call upset the apple cart. He removed 1 or 2 secretaries of ministries and kept the rest, or reappointed the rest. So we have reason to believe that at least till the parliamentary elections, they will be there. And he introduced 1 or 2 new persons to handle affairs of the state. So that means he did not come with come and act with vengeance against the established order, but thought it is better to allow the vehicle to run without deflating several tires and making it immobile. So that much of interest and foresight they seem to be having.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions from the audience. Maybe there is Meenakshi, who wants to ask about domestic reforms, press freedom, all that. Meenakshi is there?
Yes, sir, she is there.
Meenakshi, go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Meenakshi Pant. I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude for this opportunity to ask a question. Sir, my question will be, what domestic reforms can be expected from the newly elected government, and how will these reforms address issues like press freedom in Sri Lanka?
Arun, can you repeat the question if you got the question from Meenakshi?
She was asking about what domestic reforms can be expected from the newly elected government, and how will these reforms address issues like press freedom in Sri Lanka?
Difficult for me to answer the question. once again until such time they establish various ministries, appoint various officials to take responsibility for these ministries. But as of now, when you read the newspapers, we see newspapers publish whatever they wish to publish as they did before. So it appears, at least for the last 1 week or 9 days, nothing has happened to curtail the freedom of the press. So we hope it will continue. But of course, if there are papers that will produce or publish information which are not correct or accurate or whatever it is, as usual, they may get them to look at them. But so far, we have not seen any cracking down on the newspapers at all.
Mr. Rajiv Kumar.
Sir, he's not there. We can switch to Lakshmi.
Lakshmi Raman, please. Lakshmi Raman.
Hello,
Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Lakshmi here from Bangalore. As you have said, Professor Goonetilleke, that we are in the same geopolitical region, and whatever happens impacts, all the nations, we impact one another. We have trade relations with Bangladesh, with Sri Lanka, with other countries also in the region. I'd like to know your view as to what has happened in Bangladesh now with Sheikh Hasina being, allowed to stay in India. What implications would it have for our relations with Sri Lanka?
Well, don't get me wrong. Sri Lanka went through a sort of a revolution. None of the former presidents had to flee the country. They are very much here and moving freely. And we expect the situation to continue the same. And perhaps what happened in Sri Lanka could be an example to our friendly neighbor Bangladesh. If they follow the same kind of action, holding free and fair elections, and agreeing to the verdict of the people without any disturbance to the private lives of the individual, that will be an extremely good situation. You see, President AKD very clearly advised his party members not to light even a cracker, not to conduct any processions after the announcement was made electing him as president. So basically speaking, the following day when we got up, we don't even feel that there was an election in the country, which was not the case. There are instances of houses of rivals being set fire, people being killed, others are being assaulted, processions going to along the roads, insulting the lost candidates. None of those things happened. So far as Bangladesh is concerned, I hope similar kind of development would take place and the transfer of power will be peaceful.
Mr. Malhotra, SP Malhotra.
I don't think he's there, Arun. We can go to Mr. Harvinder Singh. Mr. Harvinder Singh, are you there?
Oh, am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Good evening, Professor.
Louder, please.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Goonetilleke. Thanks for the wonderful discussion on current situation of Sri Lanka.
Good evening.
I have a very specific question. During the election campaign, AKD mentioned that he will definitely cancel the power project by Adani Group in northern Sri Lanka. Now, after getting elected, do you think he will definitely cancel or definitely not cancel?
I am unable to take a side with regard to definitely do it or definitely not do it. But what he said basically was, when this kind of projects are being farmed out, it should be done in keeping with international or following international tenders, not just farming it out. So it appears that at least one, I think he was referring to the project, renewable energy project in the north west. That did not happen. So in Sri Lanka, in the recent past, we have had so many issues of this nature where government simply hand over various kinds of projects to either individuals or companies, sort of like on a whim. So the population is unaware what was the process followed for that kind of thing. Now, to answer your question, definitely whether we will cancel or not, I am unable to say yes or no at this point of time. But he has a concern about such projects being given on the platter. If you forget about Adani's project, if any new projects are being given, definitely they will be on tender basis. That is sure.
Mr. Anisha Chavan.
No, I don't think she is there. Aspi Kola, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
I know you will not be able to specifically answer because, as you rightly say, it's a little early days. However, there has been a move to say, for example, from Dhanushkodi to Sri Lanka, the ferry service was restarted. This was something which was there years ago now, then the LTT, the war, etc. I would like to ask if you feel that this is something which will continue in terms of closer relationship between the peoples of the countries.
Very strangely, I am very familiar with the subject. Company which has association with our main group of companies appears to be interested in the project. Now, I do not know how much of time we have. The situation is this ferry service started in 1914, ended up in 1983-84 period due to fighting. And we had no opportunity to restart it until now. And now there is this proposal to restart the ferry service. To do the ferry service, all the infrastructure on both sides are damaged or non-existent. 15 days ago, the Sri Lanka Port Authority published an EOI with the intention of building the pier and the assorted infrastructure on the Talimana side. And on the other side, that is in Dhanushkodi side, what exactly happening today, I do not know. But about a month, about 6 months ago, 6-7 months ago, there was a proposal to start this service from Dhanushkodi town in front of the one of the hotels there. Then later the authorities thought it was not the suitable place and they were planning to move. Right now, how far they have gone, I do not know with regard to the construction. So, from the Sri Lankan side, we have on 30th of October, bids will be closed, and after that RFP will be called to go ahead. But of course, we will have to work very closely with India with regard to this matter, because while deciding on the infrastructure, we have to coordinate very carefully so that we know what kind of facility we are going to construct there. So to answer your question, there is much more that I know about this thing, but to save time, from the Sri Lankan side, right now action is being taken to build the infrastructure.
John Dayal.
Thank you. Excellency, I think you've been very, very comprehensive in your responses to some excellent probing by Mr. Janardhanan. That leaves very little to ask. But as an observer for almost half a century of all the traumas Sri Lanka has faced, I just was wondering, because AKD's election comes at a time when about every single country, barring Bhutan, in South Asia, is undergoing some sort of a trauma. With Pakistan, we know what's happening. Sri Lanka, you explained it as a sort of a revolution in which at least one president has fled, as nobody else has fled from any other country in South Asia. Quite correct. And Sri Lanka, and we know what happened recently in the Maldives. In this sort of a maelstrom, you could call it, what steps would you say Sri Lanka and its neighbors, including India, would have to take to rebuild SAARC, for instance, or South Asian, how should I put it, remedial measures to ensure cooperation, to ensure mutual development, to ensure nobody accuses anybody else of provoking, supporting elements which continue to niggle at relationships. As an old hand in this region, and with your experience of the big brother in Beijing, what would you say that needs to be done in Colombo, in New Delhi, in Dhaka, in elsewhere?
Well, speaking of presidents or heads of state fleeing, yes, Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh. Our president fled Sri Lanka 2022 July. What is interesting is months later, the former president Gotabaya returned to Sri Lanka, and today he leads a normal life. People did not go for his blood. They tell that he was a foolish person who followed, he followed foolish advice given by his advisors, and consequently had to suffer the consequences. But the fact remains, he returned to country, not persecuted, leads a normal life. He attends public functions, independent days of various diplomatic missions. I have seen him. So this is Sri Lanka. You are out of your mind at one point, and the next point you feel sorry for the person concerned who took wrong decisions. With regard to the need for us to work together in the region, yes, it is very important. That is why SAARC came into being. Unfortunately, due to the never-ending issues between India and Pakistan, the SAARC became practically an institution which cannot go any further. Instead of that, I think India has very wisely decided to focus on BIMSTEC area, covering India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and countries in Southeast Asian region. And that arrangement appears to be going quite all right for the time being. Once again, nothing is permanent in this world. A relationship between India and Pakistan need not necessarily be antagonistic forever, we hope. And at some point or other, there will be opportunity for us to once again give another opportunity for the SAARC to move forward. Until then, it is very clear we need to do what is necessary to do for regional cooperation involving countries where there is no political animosity against each other.
Girija Kumar Angara.
Good evening, Professor Bernard Goonetilleke and Mr. Janardhanan. My question is that if you recall, India's assistance during the economic crisis period in the recent past to Sri Lanka was widely acknowledged graciously by the outgoing President Ranil Wickremesinghe and also even by Rajapaksas, which was considered to be virtually no strings attached kind of a financial support, which was quite to the contrary of the arm twisting and squeezing by China in the earlier period, spanning over more than a decade, where the Chinese financial interests supposed to have dominated the agreements vis-a-vis Sri Lanka. Given that, and the background of the JVP of being a Marxist party and pro-Chinese party, and given the heightened concerns, ongoing heightened concerns in the Indo-Pacific area, the economic and political approach by the new regime, how it would be seen from both the element, essentially economic, but it would also have a fallout on the political aspect. So I would like you to kindly give a thought to this, and especially given the heightened concerns in Indo-Pacific and the nature of the regime, current regime, how is it going? Where is it going?
How do I respond to that question? Our relations, as I said earlier, our relations with India and our relations with China are something time-tested. Even during the most difficult times, we have been able to maintain a balance. True, India helped Sri Lanka during the most difficult time, without which we would have been, economically, we would have been in dire strait. On the other hand, during the problem what we had with LTTE, support what we received from China was continuous. Assistance provided was no question asked, just like what India did when the economic assistance was given, and they continued. I remember at one point, put it in another way, at one point, Sri Lanka was operating the separatist war, or conducting the separatist war, with borrowed money or borrowed weapons from the Chinese. And I remember while I was there, the foreign ministry telling me that one Chinese company which provides armaments for Sri Lanka is practically about to go bankrupt because we have not paid the money. Then they assured this is, nevertheless, we will continue to provide your requirements. So that is the one is economic front, the India provided 2022, and the military support what China provided us for decades during the most difficult period when very many countries found it difficult to provide us with weapons and other resources required to conduct the war. So the whole point is we can't forget what India did in 2022, and we can't also forget what China did for several decades continuously. By the time I left China, we owed Chinese companies about $300 million for the supplies they provided to us. So not a big amount in comparison to what India provided 2 years ago to us. But nevertheless, we remember with much gratitude support given by both countries at a time when we were helpless and we needed support from our friendly countries. So for us, China is our friend and India is our friend. But one of our former presidents, President Mahinda Rajapaksa, put it in better words. He said, China certainly is our friend. Indian are different. They are our relatives. So he, I think in a couple of words, almost a volume of sentiments was expressed by saying, India is our relative. So that is where we are.
So we will take the last question. Mr. Jahangir.
Mr. Jahangir, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for a very good discussion. Appreciate it very much. Now, my question related to business and how do you see the future of Indian business in Sri Lanka, and in particular tourism, because there is a big tourism connect between India and Sri Lanka. There are also several Indian companies that are quite established in Sri Lanka. How do you see their future? Will it be as it was before, or will it be a little more constrained, or will it be, do you think, a little more liberal?
Well, actually speaking, due to the close proximity between the two countries, tourism is booming. We find large numbers of Indian tourists visiting our country, and they are the number one or top most arrivals in the country. So we expect that to continue. And of course, the private sector, which is in charge of tourism, is doing all what it can to promote tourism in India and to promote Sri Lanka among Indians.
Thank you.
The interesting aspect besides sometimes the people coming during the weekend, coming during the weekends and getting back to India after the event. So even for short, normally people come for 4 or 5 days. So 6 or 7 days, Europeans come for 10 days. But even for 2 days, they would come, have a good time and get back. So we encourage that, and we are confident that it will continue.
So we can wind up this conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Goonetilleke. Manoj.
Thank you, Excellency Ambassador Goonetilleke. That was very, very comprehensive and hugely educational. I mean, I don't always get this kind of, deep perspective in this rough and tumble of our news cycle. So thank you very, very much indeed. Arun, thank you. I mean, every time I talk to you on the phone or I listen to you, I always learn something new. Thank you very much. I had to keep going away, Arun and Ambassador Goonetilleke, because we have this edition tonight, but I'm going to listen to the whole video on YouTube, on the Indian Express's YouTube channel, where it will be up shortly. And I urge all of you who attended this, our wonderful audience, to do the same as well. My thanks, as always, to our partner who makes these shows possible, Plutus IAS. Thank you to all of you who attended. Arun and Ambassador Goonetilleke, thank you very much again, and good night.
Thank you very much for both of you. We're very happy to join this session, and we look forward to working with you in the future as well. Arun, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.